you can probably know the names of these people already, Hal and Joanne from Bodybreak. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, literally all you need to do is Google and you will see these people everywhere. So this, just to explain it, these were, I think they're a couple, I don't know. They appeared in all these ads in like the, pretty sure it was the 80s and 90s for this government, I think it was a government of Canada campaign aimed at getting Canadians to be more fit. And there really wasn't a lot to them. Like you're kind of seeing the gist of it here. There were two people. They're really fit. I think they were like international athletes or something like that. They would appear in these videos just saying, "Hey, get out there, get in shape." They had this bit called Bodybreak, which was like you can see the motto here, and that kind of sums it up. There wasn't really much to these videos. They basically just appeared on screen, said, "Get out there, get active." I think they did activities and that sort of thing, but that was kind of it. Um, and just as an aside, they've also continued with this campaign even to this day. They kind of have this cool new campaign called Time Thieves, which is really cool. And they're kind of there's this video is kind of cool because they even make a reference to Hal and Joanne at the end of this video. I've cut off the sound because this is kind of loud, but anyways, you kind of get the gist. Um, so in a couple seconds, they bring on this couple who, yeah, they kind of look a little bit like they've kind of got like jackets like Hal and Joanne might wear. So that is kind of participation. So what is the marketing strategy or brand strategy? Why am I telling you? What is the brand strategy implication for all this? So Hal and Joanne are a really great example of what's known in the marketing strategy and branding community as something called distinctive assets. So what are distinctive assets? I'm going to highlight it there so we can make it really big. What are distinctive assets? They are basically these things, for lack of a better term, that are distinctive to your brand. So they could be things like, they could be, well, I'll just skip down. They could be stuff like logos. So this is actually, funnily enough, just as an aside, there's kind of this thing in the branding community where anytime a client wants a new logo, it's like, oh, well, there's more to branding than that. And it's like, that's true, but also the instinct is the right one because logos are distinctive assets in that, they belong only to your brand. Now, some logos are more distinctive than others, but clients kind of have the right idea when they want to create a logo because it is a distinctive asset that belongs only to them. There are also, you can see here, there are a whole bunch of different ones. There's slogans, there's music, there's like a distinctive style. Like a couple of years ago, like Airbnb had a distinctive style of ad that they were creating where it was a whole bunch of, it would be like music with like a whole bunch of like images on a screen, which they got rid of. But that was kind of like a distinctive style. It could be fonts, it could be celebrity spokespeople, which is the example of participation. And the idea here is that people don't really resonate. Key messages are not ownable assets. Different brands can have different key messages. They can even kind of have the same products, all that sort of stuff. That's not really what sticks in people's minds, which is kind of the whole point of branding. What sticks in people's minds are these distinctive things. Now, it's not enough to just have a distinctive asset. It needs to be two things. Well, first of all, it needs to be distinctive. It needs to be distinguishable from other brands. So which is the horizontal axis here, but it also needs to be popular, and then most importantly of all, it needs to be associated with your brand. So let's look at these examples. I think like the Apple logo is a really great example of this. Even looking at this font, like I think we can kind of closely associate that with like Mars Bar, like Toblerone, the triangle packaging of Toblerone, all those fit. So if I were to put Hal and Joanne from Participation on this grid, which is this thing that um, Jenny Romania created to allow brands to assess their distinctive assets, um, I would put I would put them like right at the top. Like even if it's possible to be like over here, like they were extremely distinctive. Nobody else was really doing this. They were closely associated with participation brand. And by the way, I think they're still doing these. I'm not actually sure. Anyways, at the top right of this corner. So, the point of all this is not to talk about participation, it's to talk about your brand. And if you have not seen this grid already, this is something that you should probably be doing kind of ASAP and assessing your distinctive assets against where they fit in this brands or where they fit on this grid. Now, if you're looking at this and saying, I don't have any distinctive assets. First of all, that's probably not true. You probably do. You just need to, again, look at something like this, start to think about like even your logo. Do you have like a font that you use and all that sort of stuff? And chances are they're not, your distinctive assets are not up in this top right corner. Um, Probably you have a bunch of distinctive assets that are down in this quadrant, which is they're distinctive, but people don't know them that well because you haven't really invested a lot of money in promoting them to your audience and that sort of stuff. So that's great. The other likelihood is that you're probably somewhere down here, which is that you either don't have a lot of distinctive assets or the ones that you do have, you haven't invested a lot of money into making famous. And that's kind of the whole point of this video is that if you don't have distinctive assets, then you need to be creating some. And if you do have distinctive assets, and that's probably the ideal situation or probably the ideal option for you, is if you do have distinctive assets, you need to be investing in making them relevant to your audience and trying to move them up this fame quadrant up to the target point here. So you want to be more like Hal and Joanne, basically a participation. So how do you do that? The first thing you can do is basically just use your distinctive assets in more things. So if you're going to if you're like a B2B brand and you're going to a trade show and you have like I don't know, like a slogan or something like that, like plaster that slogan all over your booth. Like if you have like a tablecloth or like a stand-up banner or like handouts that you're giving out, if you're closely associated with like a mascot or something like that. Like this thing doesn't really talk about mascots, but I think they're really important. If you're closely associated with like a mascot that you've created, you can put like maybe you can get stuffies created and like people can bring them home to their kids or whatever. You kind of get the idea. Maybe you want to run an ad campaign that raises awareness of your distinctive assets, all that sort of stuff. So you need to be first of all mapping out where your assets are, and if you're down here, you need to be creating some. If you're down here, you need to be investing more in the ones that you already have or creating new ones. Chances are you are not up here, which is your assets are famous, but they're not very unique, and because those aren't really distinctive assets at all. But if you have like a key message or something like that that's not really distinctive, it's just like the sort of thing that could be applied to any product or brand in your category, then you need to be getting rid of those assets and moving further, moving honestly down here, trying to create some and then moving them up to this point. So that's kind of the lesson for today. If you think this is just relevant to participation, you're wrong. This is something that gets applied all the time to brands. You probably recognize this guy. I think Canadian Tire retired, for lack of a better term, this guy a few years ago. So he's no longer around. But if you watch TV or really did anything in Canada from, I don't know, I'm guessing like the years like 2015 to like a couple years ago, like 2022, you saw this guy and he was everywhere. And maybe there was a good reason why they retired Canadian Tire guy. I don't know. But Canadian Tire, this was like the definition of a distinctive asset, right? Because he is extremely unique, i.e., he's literally a person, and you can't, there's no, we haven't cloned people yet, so like Lowe's can like clone him and like create a new version of him and use them for themselves. He was extremely distinctive to Canadian Tire, and they also like Canadian Tire and whoever their agency was invested a ton of money into making this guy famous. Like obviously he wasn't famous to begin with, but they invested, literally untold millions of dollars in plastering this guy. I'm pretty sure he was in like there were images of him in stores and like print ads and like certainly on broadcast and like all that sort of stuff to like move him up to this to the top right. And like again, I don't know why they retired this guy. Maybe he was maybe he was famous, but not closely associated with not closely associated with the Canadian Tire brand, which is not like, again, that's something that's not really charted on this grid. Um, I don't know. But anyways, this is not just a participation thing. This is not just a body break thing. It is something that's unique to all brands. So take away from this lesson, one, uh, go check out some old participation videos with Hal and Joanne, because there'll probably be a trip down memory lane. There are a ton of them. I was just on their YouTube actually. Actually, yeah, let's look at it now. Um, look at all these body break videos. This is kind of what I'm talking about. They are literally all over the place. So, anyways, um, create some distinctive assets. Well, first of all, check to see where your distinctive assets are. If you have some, start investing them. If you don't have them, start creating some.